Good morning, children. So today we start with the unit number 3, chapter number 10, measure of dispersion. So first of all, I will tell you the objectives of this chapter. What is the measure of dispersion? Means we have to discuss about the meaning of dispersion or its definition. Why measures of dispersion is important. How measure of dispersions are calculated. There are four method of calculation the dispersion. So we will discuss all the four method with the example, and then measures. I can explain you measure of dispersion with the help of some diagrams also. So we have discussed that. Now they will be able to describe the homogenetic and heterogenetic of the distribution, understand the reliability of the meaning, compare the distribution as regard the variability, describe the relative standing of the data, and also shape of distribution. So let us discuss about the what is measure of dispersion. What is mean by that? So the central tendency measures do not reveal the variability present in the data. Dispersion is a scatteredness of the data series around its average. You can say like dispersion is an extent to which the value in a distribution differ from the average of the distribution. So here you can say like that dispersion is an extent to which the value of the distribution different from the average of the distribution. It indicates the lack of uniformity in the size of item. Whatever the things it is given by. So as we can say like that, we can explain it like that in the mean mode median. What we are doing, we are just finding the average. So when we represent anything with a single series or by the discrete series, so average will come. There is no doubt that average simplifies the data to a large extent. However, they do not give the whole picture of the data. So what we have to do, we have to compare with the other things, and we for clarity, for the more clarity. So we in this sense what we can do, we can say that even when the average are same, the students are different from each other from formation of their item. So hence average are not sufficient to describe the characteristics of a statistical data. So what we have to do, then it is necessary to define some additional summary measurements to adequately represent the characteristics of the distribution of that student. Means I will take the example of a student, so that is why one such measure known as a measure of dispersion. So this is the thing. So you can that is why you can say like that it is a clear that dispersion means a scatter of the value in the given distribution. Now we will discuss about the types of dispersion. There are two types of dispersion. Those are um, absolute measurements and the relative measurements. We can find out them measure of the dispersion by the absolute measure and the relative measure. Absolute measures, the dispersion is in the original unit of the data. Variability in the two and more distribution can be compared provided by they are given in the same unit and have a same average. Means the measure of the dispersion which are expressed in terms of original units of a series are termed as a absolute measures. For example, the dispersion of the salary about an average is measured in rupees. So absolute measure are expressed in the concrete um, units, example units in terms of which the data has been expressed like rupees, centimeters, kilograms, etc. Such measures are not suitable for comparing the variability of the two distribution, which are expressed in the different units of the measurement. And now we will discuss about the relative measurement. Measurement of dispersion is free from the unit of measurement of data. The measurement of dispersion, which are measured as a percentage or ratio of average, are termed as a relative measure. So relative measure is sometimes known as a coefficient of dispersion, as a coefficient means a pure number that is independent of the unit of measurement. When two and more series have to be compared, and when the data is given of the two or more, the relative dispersion is taken into account as a absolute dispersion, maybe erroneous or unified or for comparison if the series are originally is a different units. So that is it is called so you another name of the relative dispersion is coefficient of dispersion. So, absolute or relative difference is there when the two sets of data are expressed in different unit, like quintals of the sugar, uh, so like that, and the tons of the sugar cane. So, or if the average size of a very different, like manager's salary or workers' wages, then the absolute measure of the dispersion are not comparable. It in such cases, measure of relative dispersion should be used there. So now we can discuss about the characteristics or objectives of the measuring of the dispersion. So it should be readily defined that measure of the dispersion are used to test of the what extent an average represent the characteristics of the series. A low value of dispersion implies that there is a greater degree of the homogeneity amongst the various items, and consequently their average can be taken more reliable or representative of the distribution. Or you can say like that, if the dispersion is large, then the data value are more divided from the central value, thereby implying that the average is not a representative of a data and hence not quite reliable. To compare the extent of the variable in the two or more distribution, you can say on the basis of observation or like that. So that is also a different thing. Means, for example, we have to be take the things very keenly. We have to observe the things very keenly, and then we have to find out the result from there. Next is it should be easily subjected to the further mathematical. Means whatever the analysis is given there, calculation is given there, that is totally depend upon the mathematical calculation, and it should be least affected by the sampling fluctuation. Sampling fluctuation, already we have learned the sampling method in the previous chapter. So what happened when there is a different samples has come, so there is a fluctuation also come in the variability. But here in the measure of the dispersion, it is a that is not affected. So it means the sampling fluctuation is not affected by the dispersion is not affected by the sampling method, and unduly affected by the extreme value. It should not be. It should not be unduly affected by the fluctuation of the sampling in the extreme observation, because these are based on the mathematical or algebraical treatment. So that is why it is not affected. Here we can see example in the next how to find out the range. So we will discuss now the different type of methods of studying of the dispersion. It is divided into the absolute, actually divided into three parts: range, mean deviation or Lorentz curve, and quartile deviation, standard deviation. And the measure of relative dispersion is divided into five part: coefficient of range, coefficient of quartile deviation, coefficient of mean deviation, coefficient of standard deviation, and coefficient of variation. So now we will discuss the type of dispersion.